Hi everyone, Olivia Reiner here for Packers News, joined by Ryan Wood. Today we are talking a bit about the offensive linemen and how they did this past season with our player grades. They protect the quarterback, they've got a pretty important role, and one of the guys that was most integral to the Packers offensive line this season was David Bakhtiari. He was voted first team All-Pro. What made him so impressive this season?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that behind Davante Adams, he was probably their best player on the roster this year. And it's so rare what he's been able to do. I mean, he's voted first-team All-Pro for the first time this year, the only left tackle voted first-team All-Pro this year, although laughably he still can't crack the Pro Bowl for some reason. It's the third time that he's been named to the All-Pro list. The first two were second team. It's only the second time since 1984 that a left tackle who was not drafted in the first two rounds was voted first-team All-Pro. The only other one was Jason Peters in Philadelphia in 2013. If you want a franchise left tackle, which David Bakhtiari is, you get him first early in the round. You get him with one of your top two picks, and that's what you have to do. And yet they got him with the 109th overall pick in 2013. They got him in the fourth round. And if you look at the tenure of Ted Thompson, Aaron Rodgers is the greatest pick he ever had. That's obvious. Who's number two? It might be David Bakhtiari because of the production they've yielded from that 109th overall pick. You don't find franchise left tackles that late. He's become that, and by virtue of being a first-team left tackle on the first-team All-Pro left tackle, a case could be made that he was the best pass blocker in all the league this past year. That's an awfully lofty place for him to be.
Mm-hmm. So looking back to the last Packers offseason, they didn't change the offensive line all that much. How did that impact this past season?
Well, you look at what they need now, and their needs now are what they were a year ago. Right guard, their biggest need. They try to go the stopgap route again with Justin McCray a year after they had some success doing that with Jari Evans, and it didn't work. Justin McCray is a guy who you want on your offensive line for depth, but you don't want him starting 16 games. The same for Byron Bell as a veteran. He's another guy who's best used in a reserve role. So right guard, they had Brian Bulaga, major injury questions coming off that torn ACL, and he played 14 games. I think that's probably more than I thought that he'd be able to play coming off that injury. And yet there were other games that he wasn't able to finish. He turns 30 years old next month, and he's got a lot of wear and tear on his body. So right tackle is a question because how much more can Brian Bulaga's body withstand? He said at the end of the year that he felt really good. He did return to finish out the year, which I thought was impressive, but there's major injury questions there. And then left guard is the one of the three where, Lane Taylor had a really good year in 2017, his first year under his new contract. He regressed last year. He had a tough year last year. I could see the Packers thinking that there's still good football left in Lane Taylor. He's still on the right side of 30, so it's going to be interesting because there is really a tepid approach that they took to building the offensive line a year ago. They've got David Bakhtiari, they got Corey Linsley, they got 3 question marks elsewhere. I suspect that with Matt LaFleur and the value that he places on the offensive line, you're going to see a more aggressive approach to building it this offseason. And if nothing else, more competition at left guard and right tackle, and a new right guard. They've got to fill that spot.
So with all of that in mind, what do the Packers need to do immediately to bolster the offensive line this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think that you can't take the first round off the table. I mean, we're talking about putting prime assets into that group, which is something that, the last offensive lineman that they took in the first round was Brian Bulaga in 2010. It's been a long time since they've put those kind of assets in there, and you never know how the draft's going to go because it depends on how the board is, but they've got the 12th pick, they've got the 30th pick. One of those picks being used on the offensive line, I think, is definitely in play.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to be a big part of Matt LaFleur's offense. It will be interesting to see what he does in the offseason, what GM Brian Gutekunst is able to do at the draft this upcoming month, in a few months, and this upcoming offseason just in general with free agency starting soon. So hopefully you guys learned something and were able to reflect a little bit on this past season. We will be looking at other position groups this upcoming week and next week, so please come back to PackersNews.com. We'll have more for you later. Thanks so much for joining us.